Hello. So here we are on chapter 5 of Socks by Beverly Cleary. Poor brown bear. That hasn't happened yet, but I wonder when it will. Chapter 5 is called A Visit from Nana. A puzzling and, to Socks, inconvenient change took place in the behavior of Mrs. Bricker. Puzzling means it's kind of confusing. He doesn't know why. And inconvenient means causing a lot of extra trouble for Socks. Mrs. Bricker, who usually spent the least possible time cleaning, now upset the household by a thorough cleaning. Socks had to rewash his paws after he walked across the kitchen floor, wet from the mop. The vacuum cleaner drove him from one room to another, and the smell of the ammonia that Mrs. Bricker used to wash the windows drove him out of the house entirely. The only good that came from all this house cleaning was the disappearance of dust from under the bed. Socks could now safely hide there without sneezing. Cooking came next. Mrs. Bricker dumped Socks out the back door so he would not be underfoot. He watched from the window while she made a salad, experimented with cake mixes, and tried meatloaf recipes. Not long afterward, Mr. Bricker, carrying luggage, walked into the house with a thin, brisk woman whom he called Mom, but referred to as Nana. Mr. Bricker's mom had arrived to spend 2 weeks' vacation visiting her son and his family. So it's Mr. Bricker's mom, which makes her Charles Williams' Nana, right? That's why Mrs. Bricker was cleaning and cooking so much. Socks could tell right away that Nana was no Mrs. Risley. He sniffed her luggage for a clue to what was inside and then turned his back on all the greetings and washed himself. Exclamations of, "Nana's precious big boy. Yes, he is. And he looks just like his father when he was the same age," bored Socks. Nana, unlike Mrs. Risley, did not understand the importance of a cat. After Mrs. Bricker's mother had admired her grandson, given the family presents, and been taken on a tour of the house, she said, "Bill, I didn't know you had a cat." Socks sensed all eyes were looking at him and looked up from his washing. He saw that Charles William was sitting on his mother's lap, staring at his grandmother's shining hair, which was the color of iced tea. "Good old Socks, he's quite a character," said Mr. Bricker. Then, "Oh, remember at the very beginning when Mr. Bricker said he was never allowed to have a pet? I wonder if Nana does not like cats." Interesting. Let's keep looking. Let's keep reading and find out. "What have you done to your hair? It looks different." "That is between me and my hairdresser." Nana smiled and changed the subject back again. "Are you sure it's a good idea keeping a cat when there's a baby in the house?" Mrs. Bricker was quick to defend their pet. "Socks is a clean, healthy cat, and we love him. He's a member of the family." Socks delicately washed the pink pads on his right front paw. Nana was not convinced. "Nana's hair is dyed. It should be gray." That's what Mr. Bricker meant when he asked if her hair had been colored. Boy, Charles William sure is growing up. Nana was not convinced. "Some babies are allergic to cats." "Not our boy," said Mrs. Bricker. "Charles William hasn't shown any signs of allergy." She took hold of her son's big toe and said, "He's a big, healthy boy. Yes, he is." Charles William, who was drooling because he was teething, looked pleased. "This little piggy went to the market," said Mrs. Bricker, wiggling one rosy toe. "Ig, ig, ig," said Charles William. But aren't you afraid the cat might scratch the baby? Nana insisted, her glance resting on the corner of the couch, the chair where Socks had sharpened his claws. Not really afraid, said Mrs. Bricker. I do keep an eye on him when they're in the same room, but he's very patient with Tiffy, the little girl next door. When she picks him up around the middle, he doesn't even fight. He goes limp until she puts him down, and then he runs away. You can't be too careful around a baby. Why is Nana saying all these things? Nana was not persuaded that Socks should stay a member of her son's family. She wants Socks gone. Socks soon found the grandmother's visit a trial. That means it's difficult. Everything he did was wrong. When he tried to jump on her lap, his claw caught her knit dress and he was scolded. Her nylons were dancing over the vent as they dried in the bathroom were irresistible to him, and he could not understand why she felt that he had misbehaved when he pulled them down and played with them. Couldn't she understand that a cat needed to play? When Nana settled on the couch to knit a sweater for Charles, Socks was so fascinated by the movement of her needles that he had to jump up next to her to watch. She eyed him with disapproval, but when he sat very, very still, the way he sat while watching a bug crawl across the floor, she did not object. He did not take his eyes off of those flashing needles until, with one quick swipe of his paw, he reached out and hooked the head of the needle in his claws. The needle slid out of the yarn and flipped to the coffee table with a clatter. Now, see what you made me do, said Nana crossly. I just dropped 94 stitches. Mrs. Risley would not have spoken to Socks in this tone of voice. Isn't it funny the way cats are always attracted to people who don't like them, said Mrs. Bricker. Miss Socks's feelings were hurt when she picked him up and set him down outside the front door. That is sometimes the case, that cats like people that don't like cats. They come up and they want to rub against them and they want to get petted and play with them. As the days passed, Nana grew more critical of Socks. It means she said more bad things. She was harder on him. If he scratched, she was sure he was crawling with fleas that might bite Charles William. Every time Socks watched and waited until he could get his paws on Brown Bear, she took it away from him and brushed it off. If her grandson sneezed, she was positive he was allergic to cats. She was constantly brushing cat hair off the couch, and one evening, she plucked a cat hair out of her salad. That is kind of gross. She was polite, though, and she did not mention it, but the Brickers noticed. Nights were hardest of all. Because the Brickers' house was small, Nana had to sleep on the couch in the living room, while Socks, who considered the couch his bed, was shut in the laundry room. Socks did not like this arrangement. Every evening he complained himself hoarse, meow, even though Mrs. Bricker interrupted the conversation in the living room to shout, Socks, be quiet! Socks lay yowling on the hard laundry room floor and groping under the door with his paw. Meow! Can you imagine? Meow! All night long. He sat up and threw his shoulder against the door. When nothing, absolutely nothing would free him, his last act before settling down on the sweatshirt was to plow kitty litter over the floor, scratch, scratch the kitty litter, kick it everywhere, so someone would have to sweep it up in the morning. There you go, Socks, you got them. I think I'm going to be able to read a couple more pages. Socks became so discouraged that each night he yowled less and sulked more until one moonlit night when the house had settled into silence. The laundry was so light that Socks was restless. He couldn't settle down. He jumped out of his box, extended his paws as if he were bowing, enjoyed a good stretch, and then threw his shoulder against the door, which this time surprised him by silently opening enough for a cat to walk through. Socks was free! He padded through the kitchen and dining room to the living room where Nana slept. His eyes widened in the dim light, and as he was about to spring up on the blanket next to her, he noticed her suitcase lying open in the corner of the room. Nana had not understood his curiosity about her suitcase, and she had not allowed him to look inside. Socks trotted across the carpet, and after a sniff, stepped into the suitcase. Socks was about to use the suitcase for a bed when a ghostly object on the desk caught his attention. He stood motionless, staring up at something white shining in the darkness. When it did not move and he could not smell it, he sprang to the top of the desk to investigate. There, he discovered an astonishing thing. Nana's hair! There, amidst Mrs. Bricker's books and papers, sat the hair on a faceless white head. He had never seen such a sight in his life. His head cocked to one side, Socks patted the soft fibers with a curious paw. He was fascinated. He patted with his other paw. Here was something to play with, and Socks was lonely for something to play with. Oh boy, I think that's a good place to stop. I thought Nana had dyed her hair dark brown, but she had gotten a wig. Oh my, sometimes when people get older, their hair turns gray, and some people lose their hair. Sometimes it happens to men, and sometimes it happens to women too, that their hair starts falling out or getting thin. Oh boy, how mad is Nana gonna be tomorrow? Oh.